Namaste. My name is Preity Upala, and I am a global thought leader and a multimedia personality. Welcome to my podcast, The Preity Experience. Join me as I explore some of the most fascinating and crucial issues that affect our world today. I take a unique global perspective on these issues, and the very foundation of my insights is humanity and spirituality. I'm Preity Upala, and welcome to the Preity Experience.
Another beautiful sunny day spent with you fine folks. This episode of our podcast is brought to you by K-Bar Soap Company. Now I want to talk about something real quick, because lately I've seen in a lot of Facebook groups about people complaining that they're listening to shows that have too much sponsorship. And while we don't take on more than we should and don't want to take up too much of your time, this is how we make our show. We appreciate you supporting these guys. So, K-Bar Soap. Look at nothing you don't know about these guys, right? They're down in South Carolina. They make some bomb-ass soap. And there's all different, I guess you could call them flavors, scents, whatever. They're great bars of soap. You'll never switch back to store-bought stuff after you try a bar. And if that scares you, get 4. Because that's what we do in life, right? We do the stuff that scares us and overcome our fears. Get yourself some K-Bar Soap. www.kbarsoapco.com. That's KBARSOAPCO.com. And don't forget to use Hellbound at checkout, because that's going to save you a discount on your order. The next sponsor of the show is Podcorn. I know we have a lot of listeners that are podcasters themselves. And we listen to your guys' shows too, because that's how we all learn, right? We learn from each other, which is great. So you can learn this from us. Podcorn has been a great service for us to match up with brands as we go through 2020. It helps you to monetize your programs so that you can continue to run. With Podcorn, there's no middleman. You touch base right with these businesses, talk through what their expectations are and what you can do for them, set your price, and that's it. There's no exclusivities. You don't give up your rights to your podcast. And the folks over at Podcorn support you at every step to ensure you're protected and compensated for all the work you do for the brands. If you want to learn more, click the link in our show notes to sign up to Podcorn and start browsing all the sponsorship opportunities. I got an email the other day. There was like 91. That's pretty amazing, and they're doing great stuff. So we thank Podcorn for sponsoring this episode, and you too can start monetizing your podcast at podcorn.com/podcasters. That's podcorn.com/podcasters. For the love of God, we're already into the middle of January, and in this week's episode, we met up with Preity Upala, who's a former investment banker turned Miss India, now a Hollywood entrepreneur. She gave up everything to move to the other side of the world to pursue her dharma. She speaks around the world, has her own radio show, is writing a book, and is a political editor, as well as producing a TV show. She's got a lot going on. Spirituality is the very foundation and essence of everything she does. She lives her life with love and compassion, and as a true citizen of the world, she's traveled to almost 100 countries, and her message of Dharma permeates through everything she does and touches. She believes her journey will inspire you. So please welcome Preity Upala.
Hey! Oh, here we go! Come on. Hellbound! Yo! We're hellbound with Halo! Put 'em up for the big show! We're hellbound with Halo! Put 'em up on the big show! Hellbound with Halo's the Hellbound Nation!
Well, good afternoon, Preity. How are you?
Oh, good afternoon. Namaste, everyone. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Great. We're a couple weeks into the new year here, and good things are happening already. We can't complain. You intrigued me.
Oh, how so?
I read some different things about you, and I'm like, wow. I told Sully, I'm like, we got to get her on the show. Actually, Sully agreed when he saw the bio. And there's just so much to talk to you about because you
Mm-hmm.
do have an extensive history of experience in many realms. But if you could start just by explaining what your experience was, like, were you born in India and came to America, or are you American born? Where did Preety start?
Where did it all begin for me? Actually, neither of those two. I was born in Dubai, in the Emirates, in the Middle East. My parents had moved there before I was born, and they're Indian. And my dad was working there. So I grew up in the Middle East, and I have quite the experience of having really lived in that part of the world, which is so different from the West. And when you do live there for about 15 years, like I did, you really know the good, bad, and especially the ugly. So it's interesting because when I write and speak about geopolitics and all kinds of interesting things like that, I come from a very real view of how things actually go down in that part of the world, which I've noticed a lot of people don't because they haven't spent years there and they're just sort of going with sentiment or the rhetoric and all that. So grew up in Dubai, went to school there. My parents were they love to travel, and I inherited that love from them too. So growing up, I was very fortunate. I got to travel all around, to lots of exotic places. And then my family moved to Europe briefly to Paris, France, before they actually immigrated to Australia, which is where I went to university and I went to high school, and I'm an Australian citizen.
Wow.
Several years ago, I won a scholarship to study in New York, and that's what brought me out here to the States. So briefly in New York, very briefly, and then of course LA was beckoning to me, and this is my fateful destination for now. I think it's home, and I think it's a part of my. It's always going to be a home for me. I feel like there's a karmic connection between myself and LA. I think that this is where it's all going to happen for me, and in some ways, it's the epicenter of the world. Everything sort of ripples out from here. So I'm so blessed to be living here and doing all that I do and having all the freedoms that we do and the liberties and what a fantastic country, right? Despite everything negative, because, when you travel to almost 100 countries like I have, I think you really see the good and the bad of every place and you're very kind of objective about things. And I think we are just so blessed and privileged.
Right.
So, yeah, I love traveling. I speak different languages and I continue to travel a lot for work and also some play too. I try to mix after my work is done, I always take some time off and enjoy the city, which I just came back from China, India, and Thailand. And Thailand was where I spent Christmas and just before New Year's. So
Wow.
it was amazing.
That's impressive. I mean, even if you have to go for work just to be able to experience that, because I know I'm a big traveler as well. I love to
Mm.
travel, I love to see new places. And I'm sure that even though sometimes it has to be for work, it's still a joy to experience some different places, see different things,
Yes, for sure.
Is Dubai a lot like LA? I've never been out east. I've never been to Europe or Dubai or any of those
Ah,
areas.
interesting.
So I'm very curious about that.
It's more similar to Vegas, if I can put it that way, if anything, because it's an artificial city. And I wouldn't say the whole country is artificial because they are very sort of indigenous or kind of authentic, rustic parts to it. It's only Abu Dhabi, which is the capital, and Dubai, which is the main city, which are built up. And they basically, it's new oil money. And it's only the last sort of 40 years that they really have blossomed, and
Okay.
in a very short amount of time, they did a lot of growth and development and stuff. So it's got very good infrastructure, but I think it's like this beautiful picture that has serious flaws inside. And when people go there for a vacation, they only spend maybe 3 to 5 days and they have a ball because you've got incredible hotels and good restaurants, very good shopping, and the weather is, unless you go in the summer, which is unbearably hot, the rest of the year is, it's warm. It's a nice kind of tropical kind of climate,
Hmm.
and lots of fun things to do. It's very family friendly, which is nice. It seems like it's a very safe place, which in some ways it is. But it's only when you either work there or live there for an extended period of time, or if you just like move there, relocate, and live there for years, that's when you see the real Dubai, the mindset, the psyche of
Right.
the local people, the government, and then you see all the things you wish you hadn't. Because I think almost the holiday vacation image of Dubai is almost more pleasant to most
Right.
people. And everyone has a different experience there. I think an American or a European expat will, I mean, I'm sure they'll see things for what they are, but they will still have a different treatment and reality there. Whereas someone from Africa, if they go there and, they're maybe doing some, like a much more lower white collar job there or something, I mean, blue collar job there or something like that, I think they're going to have a tougher time and it's not going to be that forgiving to them. So, but I recommend people to go there for a holiday. Even I go every year multiple times for just vacation sometimes. And also they have a lot of summits and stuff. So I've spoken there,
Okay.
so it's good for business meetings and things like that and conferences and all that.
Yeah, I've heard good things about it. I don't know if you have or not, Sully. Have you? I know you knew a person that was over there for a little while, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a friend that was working over there. I believe he was working with the UN. But he said it was beautiful. He had a great time, and the people were amazing.
Yeah, I mean, they would put you up they'd give you very nice accommodation, and I think you'd have good security. You'd be very safe. You'd probably get a driver and a cook or something like that. So that's still, you're shielded, I think, from the other side. But I think having worked for the UN, they would be briefed on things that go down there. So I am sure he would have been very familiar with all the issues that have been raised in the UN to do with the Emirates itself. There's plenty of human rights violations and things like that on various levels. They do get picked up, so I'm sure he knows that pretty well enough. But yeah,
it's interesting you bring up the human rights and whatnot. You looks like you've been to some pretty risky countries, Russia, China, just to name a few. I mean,
that's true.
Yeah.
I always breeze through. Look, my philosophy is whatever you expect in life, I think that's what you're going to find. I always expect to be safe and protected and to have a wonderful time where people are going to receive me and going to be very kind and welcoming. And somehow I go to all kinds of funky places and I have a fantastic experience because I think I'm going there with my best foot forward and I'm trying to be love and light and radiate sort of goodness and my best self. And somehow I think people do reciprocate that. What I've learned traveling to so many places is no matter what the political or social economic situation of the place, people are the same. They're all humans, right? So they all want to be respected and loved and understood and listened to and sort of cared about and acknowledged. So as long as you give them the courtesy of that sort of basic human touch or human need, then I think you will find them extending themselves. And people do like what's foreign and different. And I think everyone is proud of their country. They want to be a good host.
Sure.
So
oh, absolutely.
if you're a good guest, I think you'll end up with a good host. So touch wood, I'm very lucky because I see it, and I see sometimes very negative things happening to people around me, even in the same space. I feel like I've been protected, but I see that someone else might not have been that lucky. And it makes you feel grateful, I think, for just the fact that I'm safe and healthy and alive. And also it makes you grateful for what we have here, because this is not a police state, right? Last I checked.
Yeah. And
not
I don't
in
think
that way, at least.
And I don't think you're going to these places to project your agenda. I mean, you're obviously a very intelligent person. I mean, having gone to the university, 16, I think I read.
Yes, that is true. Oh my God, you've done your research.
Oh yeah. So, but I mean, it just sounds like you're not walking around with an agenda. You're
That's
highly
true.
intelligent. You're putting out into the universe that you want to receive, and I think that's a
Yes.
big thing with people in life. Like, people just want the basic needs in life. They want to be loved, they want to be fed, and they want to have the ability to provide for their family.
Yes.
And I think if you could do that and just let people do what they're going to do, and as long as they're not hurting anybody, I say do what makes you happy.
Absolutely. And I mean, from a spiritual sense, there is no other, there is no out there. It's all in here. The world is sort of just kind of an extension or figment of your imagination in some way. It's just an illusion. All we have is the present moment, and all you are is your inner self anyways. All you have is your self. So all you can do is just do your karma in the world, which literally means action. So you do whatever action and you will get whatever is, whatever resonates with that. And
Mhm.
sometimes people go around expecting the worst of humanity, and guess what?
Right.
They get it because that's where their mindset is at. And that's not to say that there aren't, injustices in the world. We live in such a dark world, I mean, we also live in such a light world too. I think it's both happening simultaneously. But what do you want to touch on? Like, pick love over hate,
Mhm.
and 9 times out of 10, trust me, you'll have a good experience.
Was there a country that you went to where you were expecting like a certain or a different experience, and you were just blown away by your visit?
Well, I mean, Russia was very interesting. They were, even the like even to get a visa to go there is a very long, expensive,
It's
tedious
challenging, I'm sure.
task. Yeah. This was several years ago. I was asked to host a international film festival there, which was the Moscow Horror Film Festival. And it was a big deal. So I was the host. I was the English host, and I had a Russian counterpart host with me. And, they had arranged all the flights for me, and they gave me some travel voucher, and I had to go to some travel agency, and they said, we need your bio, and you need to translate it into Russian and give it to us, because they're going to read the bio, and it's like an essay of who you are, your whole
Mhm.
life story.
Oh my goodness.
So this is hilarious, so I just used Google Translate, and I sort of translated my bio into a few pages. I don't know what was put there, but clearly someone read it.
That's a lot of trust in Google Translate.
Yeah, and I guess there was nothing gnarly because I had absolutely, and you pay $250.
Wow.
It's very expensive.
Oh wow.
And then you get this visa to go there, and then when you enter, Moscow, they give everyone a dirty look. Like, everyone who comes, all the foreigners, they just like look at them up and down. So they're just seeing you, whether they're looking at you and seeing, is this a bad seed? Is this a bad actor or not? And then if you have the proper visa and all that, they'll let you go. And usually it's
Mm.
fine. But then once you enter, it's crazy, and when I went there, it was like -30. It was very cold, but they had a driver waiting for us, and everyone is so nice. And I think what blew me away with Moscow especially was the nightlife there is actually amazing.
Oh really?
So it's like -30, and these people are partying like there's no tomorrow. It's crazy. I was like, these people are crazy, and the restaurants are very nice. Everyone's very hospitable, but good music, and people are happy, and maybe I don't know, maybe that's why they're happy, because they have nothing to lose. Like, they're just making the best of the situation. And I think
Mhm.
they're very resilient people, I think you learn to respect the Russian people after you travel there, because you realize that the living conditions there they're not favorable. They're very tough. Everyone is having a very hard time. But despite that, I think they're just trying to keep up the
Right.
human spirit, so
Yeah.
that was an interesting.
The weather alone is a challenging.
And I would love to go there again, because I did this show, this MTV Russia they did a documentary, and they actually ended up interviewing me. And apparently I got put in this documentary, and it was on the like national news or something like that. So that event actually made me kind of famous. And then the people were
Okay.
coming up, because we were there for a week. And I had like a line of people waiting to get autographs signed. They don't even know who I am, but they were so cool. So yeah, I had just a wonderful experience.
That's awesome.
You made a mention of you feel like what
Yes.
you put out is kind of what you get back. Is that your mantra? Is that
Yes.
what you live by? Obviously, we did some research on you prior to having you coming on, but is that kind of the rule you live by? What you put out, you get back?
We I have many philosophies in life, just like most people do. I think the most important philosophy I try to live by is a very spiritual one. Essentially, it is that life is it's Maya. It's all an illusion. It's not real in the real sense of the word. I mean, yes, we are this identity and we are living in a house, in a city, in the world. But from a spirit level, none of this exists outside of ourselves. So my mantra is don't be attached to your ego identity. Don't be attached to being Preity Upala and all of that stuff. Just be in the present moment and kind of just realize that the only thing important is your own spiritual journey. And this lifetime is for you to do
Right.
inner work on yourself and to be a good human being and get on the spiritual path and sort of keep making progress on that level, which is a very deep, intimate path, and you're always alone on that path. Everything else is just an illusion, it's just a distraction. I think people usually have the opposite reality where they're so attached to their identity, their job,
Hmm.
their house, their car, their wife, spouse, whatever, and the job and the world that they live in. And what they end up neglecting is actually their spirit and their soul and their spiritual path, which is the only thing that matters at the end, because we're all here for liberation, right?
Right.
Of the
Hmm.
ego. So that's one of the mantras I try to live by. And also the other one is the only thing that exists is the present moment, because the future and the past are not actually realities. They either it hasn't come or it's behind you. So it's not happening in real time. The only thing happening in real time is this moment. So all change and magic happens in this moment.
So, do you think each person has a path in life that's already predetermined? Or do you think it's kind of just all happens the way you imagine it?
Well, that's a very good question. I've always asked myself, like, is it free will or is it destiny?
Right.
What is it? And after like a deep contemplation and sort of really thinking about it and reading about it, like various perspectives on it, I think the answer that I come to is that it's actually both. I think the greater destiny of every person is sort of pre-written to some extent. And I am a big believer in karma. So if you believe in that concept, then your karma gives you your existence in this. And again, if not everyone believes in multiple lifetimes and all that, but the soul is, at least my understanding is that the soul
Hmm.
is eternal,
Right.
right? It doesn't die after one life. So if it's eternal, then the mind and the body do die. But then if you haven't attained the liberation of the soul, which is why we're here, then you'll get another shot at it. And that's basically essentially the concept of reincarnation. And in the East, they believe in that because they think you get many chances to come back in the world and sort of do liberate. And then you don't have to come back. Then maybe you can come back as an angel or a prophet or something like that. But you don't need to. You can just be in the, well, I don't really believe in heaven and hell like
Hmm.
as places out there, but you just go back to universal consciousness, I think. So I think if you believe in karma, everyone has some greater destiny and based on their previous karma and so on. But within that sort of predestiny, I think you have free will. I think the opportunities that will be presented to you are possibly predestined because you just think, oh my God, I randomly met this person or how did this, magical sort of serendipitous things happen to us and we have no explanation for it. So I think those things are predestined, but you can walk away from it, maybe meeting someone who's going to offer you a particular opportunity is destiny
Hmm.
or it's predestined. It's pre-written that will happen to you, but you could say no, you can turn it down and you can go another path. That's free will. And we all have that. And even from a spiritual perspective, whether it's God or the universe, nobody has the right over your free will. And that's why, when people say, why are all these kids dying in Africa or why do good things happen to bad people? The real answer to that is whether it's God or just a higher power or universal consciousness, it does not have, and it should never have the power to supersede the human
Absolutely.
free will. Because then why are we here? Then why are we going through this exercise of life if I mean, certainly there is divine intervention. I think there is something as divine protection and divine blessings, absolutely. But that's very different from doing everything for you. And they're not supposed to. I mean, you're supposed to live this life, and make your
Hmm.
choices. And then you have the consequences that you have to live by.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually agree 1,000% with
Yeah.
that. And, I was raised Catholic and I believe in
Mhm.
reincarnation. I believe,
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
yeah, you come back. And I say I was raised Catholic, but I've kind of eased up on it.
Yep. But in Catholicism, I don't think they have the concept of reincarnation in the way
They
that
don't.
they don't. Yeah. They think that
Right.
once you die, that's it. You either go to heaven or hell, I guess.
Right. And I believe, like what you said,
Yes.
as far as each life, you have the opportunity to better yourself.
Yes.
So my belief is that when we die, our bodies die, our
Yes.
soul doesn't, and
Yes.
our soul continues on,
Absolutely.
and you come back
Yes.
with that soul, unaware of your past life,
Yep. True.
and given a new life
Yeah.
to correct and be better than your last life.
Yes, absolutely. That's the whole purpose. And that continues until you attain moksha, which is a Sanskrit word for liberation of the soul. That's the only reason why we're here. We're not here to make money and be successful and enjoy all these things. I mean, that's all like sort of byproducts. Those are just like icing on the cake. The real reason is the liberation part, which people, so most of us, I think 99% of the world is asleep. They don't live like that. They are too
No.
consumed with
Mhm.
all this material stuff. And they, guess what? They keep coming back and back and back. It's very few people that are actually liberating each lifetime.
That must explain the old grumpy people then, because they've lived so many lives that at this point they just get old and freaking grumpy and they can't stand to deal with
Well, you
people
can
anymore.
find the young people. Like, I know I'm an old soul. Not because I think I've had to come back so many times because I was getting it wrong all the time. I just think that I have probably done a lot of spiritual work in my past lives. So that's why in this lifetime, I just have that knowledge intact and that wisdom and all that. So from a very young age, I was already on the path. You meet a lot of young people these days and they're just like, they're so mature and wise beyond their years. We call them old souls. And then you meet like
Mhm.
70, 80-year-olds who are very childish and not childlike, but just very juvenile and
Right.
silly, and they're not getting it, or they're just mean or angry or hateful. And you just think these people didn't get it. They're babies. Spiritually, they're
Mhm.
babies.
What's your feeling when you came to America and how materialistic our society is? It sounds to me like your viewpoint on life obviously is loving life and having that positive mindset, and material doesn't matter and money doesn't matter. It's about maybe what we can do for others that makes us feel good and what we can do for ourselves to make us feel good. What was your impression on American society?
So that's a very good question. Now, I came from Sydney, Australia. So, I mean, Australia and America, Sydney, LA, it's not like I was coming from another part of the world. So, I love Australia. It's amazing. And if you've ever dealt with Australian people, they're fun. They're hoot, they're awesome. They work hard, they play hard, they love to party, they love to, they love to have a beer, they love sports. They're just good, honest people.
I'm in.
But
Let's go.
it's Western. It's a Western, society.
Yeah.
And unlike, I see what I've noticed about America is it's a very religious country, very faith focused, kind of puritanical, very formal in that way. Australia is not. They're not religious. Nobody goes to church. I don't think that they really. Most of them are just agnostic or atheists. And because it's such a
Hmm.
multicultural society, I think there's many people from other faiths and religions that are able to practice their religion freely. And certainly their political system is there's a division or separation of certain states to a great extent, which is good. But I mean, it's a Western, they are as materialistic as Americans. So from that perspective, I don't think it was very different. What I've noticed, everything here was consumption and deals. It's like it was a
Okay.
shopper's cart. Like everything was like, this is on sale. It's like America is on sale. Everything is like, and it was good value. That's what I noticed. That food, a drink, or anything you can purchase, I think you get more value for your money here than you do in Europe or Australia for sure, which is interesting. So, it was interesting in that way. But yeah, I did notice sort of the religious aspect. That's not a bad thing. I think it's good to have faith in something, but you have
Right.
to be careful that you don't go overboard and you have to have mutual respect also for other people who may have a different faith to yours.
Well, sure. Yeah. And I think a majority of Americans do feel that way. I respect all religions. I think we both do, right? So, I mean, it doesn't matter to me what religion people
Yes.
Yeah.
follow.
I think more so now, probably within what, maybe like the last 20, 30 years in the US, that people have been a little bit more, I would say a lot more open minded towards other people's beliefs and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I remember, my dad growing up, he grew up in a very strict Catholic family, and there
Wow.
was conversations about, was it Presbyterians or,
Yeah.
Anglicans.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and the
Mhm.
Catholics. I mean, it was, and Baptists and,
Yes.
whereas now is a lot of the main beliefs are all the same.
True. And I think we're in the last 20, 30 years, in this country, we've been exposed more than ever to other faiths. And especially, I think this whole yoga phenomena and sort of this spiritual but not religious phenomena that started really in the 60s, right? With all the hippie movement and
Hmm.
all that. That's essentially sort of Eastern, Indian kind of karmic philosophy coming. And it was great. And a lot of Americans took to that because they didn't see it as religious because it's not. It's really just about the philosophical view of life and yoga, meditation, being vegetarian, and all that good stuff.
It's interesting you bring up yoga because I've
Yes.
done a couple yoga classes, like for the babies and stuff. Um,
So cute.
yoga for beginners. Um,
I love yoga. It's
yeah, me too.
amazing.
But the thing that really surprised me with the yoga was how like at peace I was. Like not only how my
Yes.
body felt afterwards, but how my mind felt. And I wasn't, and like you were just saying, like I wasn't really going in there for that in itself. Like I was going there for more of the physical benefits of like the
Yeah.
stretching, the sweating, because I did the hot yoga.
Yes.
But like I just came out of there,
I like the
yeah.
hot
And but I came
yoga.
out of there like, and I felt like my mind was at peace, and I was just focused on the class and the next movement or the next stretch, and that
Yes.
was very interesting to me to experience that.
While I'm happy that it's so widespread around the world and, you have, especially here in Southern California and LA, the west side of LA is the sort of hub of yoga in the world. There are more studios here than, maybe even in India where it comes from. But, the, the problem is how it's marketed here, not everywhere, because I think some places it's very
Hmm.
authentic, but unfortunately, it in a lot of places it's they're sort of distorting
Yeah, they
it.
commercialized it. Yeah.
They're commercializing it. I think they're removing the spiritual aspects of it, and also sadly something dangerous I've noticed is I think they're trying to remove also the kind of the Vedic or the Indic roots to it,
Oh, really?
and you can't sort of separate. um it's a Vedic science. It's based on the Vedas, which are the spiritual text of for Hinduism, for example. And Hinduism is not a religion; it's a
Yeah.
civilization, to be honest. And beyond that, it's a knowledge system.
Hmm.
So, although it's not religious, it is Hindu though, because it's Vedic. But you can't sort of dissect yoga from that and say, no, 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 it has nothing to do with anything Hindu, but it's just a spiritual tool. I think that's farcical and it's very offensive to the Vedic tradition itself, which is where it
Mhm.
stems from.
I could understand that for sure.
As a Hindu myself and someone from India and a yoga teacher, I don't like that. I find it's very dangerous because then you're going down paths where 5 years from now they're going to say that yoga was invented in Los Angeles or
Yeah.
London or something. It's already happening that way.
Yeah, and I believe too, like if you take away that meaning of it, from like the
Yes,
experience that I had with it, because I
yes,
actually had a good teacher who understand the fundamentals of what it was and where it came from. But 20, 30 years from now, what's the difference between that and Pilates?
yeah. Or just it'll just be a series of poses, and yoga is definitely not about
No.
poses. In fact, there are 8 facets to yoga, and asana, which is the physical poses, is one of them. There are others, which is being vegetarian and not lying and ahimsa, and so there's 7 other things other than the physical postures that don't get taught. And the combination of all of that is yoga.
Hmm.
It's the union of the mind, body, soul. But a lot of authentic studios do talk about
Yeah.
philosophy of the yoga and other Vedic philosophies.
I was just trying not to pass out, so it was good.
We can kind of move into more of a realm that I guess I can associate with a little bit better. You are a beautiful, beautiful woman.
Oh, thank you. You're so sweet.
You were Miss India.
Miss India International. Yes.
Okay.
Mm.
Yeah.
Now, how did you get into that?
So when I was in Sydney, Australia, I got scouted by some person who was running a pageant, and this was the Miss Earth pageant. It's pretty big. And she saw me at some event, and she just said, I like you. I like the whole package, and you're a good person, and you've done charity work, and you're smart, and you would be the perfect role model for, women. And we want people like you for this pageant. So would you consider applying and participating, competing? I have zero interest. I always didn't think anything of these pageants and these people who join the pageants. I just think these girls, I don't know why they make such a big deal out of it. And it seems like they have nothing else going for them in their lives other than this little pageant, right?
Yeah.
And in some ways, it kind of worked out to be true. But anyway, she came to me and I thought, you know what, this could be a great platform for me. So I said yes. So I sort of, I competed in that, and I teamed up with this African charity called Charity Water Australia, or Charity Water or something like that. Wonderful couple from New Zealand, and they still run it and they're doing really well. But I got involved with them, and anyway, the pageant experience was interesting, but I got a lot of press. I was in all the newspapers. Everyone wanted to interview me and all that good stuff. And I just thought, although it's not something I'm very, it's not something even I'm proud to say that I was involved in. It does give you some platform, and you can kind of open some doors. And so that led to other pageants, and I won a few, but including
Right.
this one, which actually happened here after I moved to America. It was happening actually in New York, on the East Coast.
Okay.
So again, I just thought, hey, it's a platform. Why not? You never know. So these things happen, and quite frankly, I don't think it opened any massive doors for me. I think I'm the kind of person, I think I had so much else going for me. I would have gotten to where I needed to go. I didn't need this to sort of get me to climb the
Right.
ladder of success or whatever. But it was an interesting experience, I think. But I think when I moved to LA, it's a big thing here. I think if you say, oh, I was this, I was that, somehow they just go crazy. And here, I think it opened more doors than anything. I've got on all the lists of all the PR people, and they invite me to every event. I'm like the celebrity person there. So it's good.
Yeah. I think in general, people look up to someone like yourself that has that little tag after their name
Yes.
because you're associated with, like Sully said at the beginning of the episode, you're educated, you're a smart woman, you're beautiful, you have a good philosophy, you are open-minded, you have a positive mindset. So whether that propelled you into something or not, or opened a door or not, I look at it from an outsider as not even knowing who Preity is, as this is going to be a very good woman to speak with and talk to and learn from, because she has that attached to her. Because I'm sure there's a lot of women in the world that don't get that title that have a similar mindset. However, when you get that tag next to your name, it's kind of like a reference, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you. But also the other is true too, where you meet a lot of people who have titles, and there's no substance there.
Right.
They can easily be disappointing. Like, the only thing interesting about them is that they were Miss America, and then you speak to them and you think, wow, that was a waste of time, And you see a lot of that too.
It's very true.
So I think it's a combination of everything.
Yeah, that is very true.
But I think you're right. I think we live in a society which, especially in LA, I think they're interested in what, if you're famous, or if you're very, recognition, or if you're a model, or if you won these titles, or whatnot, or some athlete even. That sort of makes you very interesting, I think, and people, they want to know about you, regardless of whether you're a good person or not, or whether you have anything good to say. But I think the human fascination that we have for like either elite status or something kind of special. It's always been there, and I think it'll always be there. That's just human nature.
Yeah.
So, these industries are built on that fascination.
Well, our human nature really is to connect, right? It's to connect
Yes,
with other
true.
people.
Yes.
As much as people try to force that not to happen, it's going to happen regardless. And that kind of goes back to our earlier conversation about meeting people or having things happen to you in life and whether or not they're supposed to or whether they just happen because of karma.
Hmm.
But we'd already talked about traveling and how much you've gone to over 100 countries from around the world. You've, like Sully said, you've been to Russia. What is it that actually brings you around to those places?
Sometimes it's just, it's like last year, for example, I was invited to speak at this global think tank. I was speaking to about 500 international CEOs, and it was a summit basically. And it was in Vietnam, and Vietnam was never on my list of places to go to. Although I'm sure it's an amazing country,
Mm-hmm.
but I had no great desire to go there. But when this invitation came, I thought, well, that's interesting. I would be. I mean, the event was good, a good one because I like Vietnamese food too, and I thought this will be a good experience. So I went there, and I had a fantastic time, and I would go there again. So sometimes it's just work, whether it's a shoot or a talk, or even when I was in the corporate world, I worked as a banker, as an investment banker, but also I worked as a consultant, and I was a floating consultant for my company where they would basically send me to projects that they had everywhere, and I would spend maybe 6 months there, help, whatever, do some requirements analysis, and then come back. Like for that project from the beginning to the end, I would just come in and help. But I was floating around and I went everywhere, and I liked that aspect because not everyone can do it. And I think if you have a family, if you're married, and if you're older, it's just very difficult. But if you're young and you don't have anything holding you back, you can do that job, and you might find it very interesting because it's like every job, every gig will be a new experience, right?
Right.
But also, I travel for spiritual reasons. I really like to go to retreats, or I'll go to see some temples or meet some guru or whatnot. And somehow my spiritual quest also takes me to all kinds of places. Like I love visiting sacred sites,
Okay.
and
Hmm.
some are easier to get to than others. But if I'm traveling anywhere, I always try to find, is there like a sacred site here, like a vortex that I can go visit? And funnily enough, almost any country has those. And sometimes it's difficult to get to, sometimes it's not. It's very much in the heart of the city or whatnot. So my spiritual quest takes me there, and sometimes it's just like for example, this recent trip, the India part was that was work. I was speaking at several conferences, but then I just took 10 days off and I went to Thailand. So that was not work at all. That was just pure relaxation,
Mm-hmm.
fun. It was like it had been such an intense year. I just needed to put my feet up for and do nothing, and I just had a fantastic time. So that was a holiday for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
When you go to these spiritual vortexes in other countries, are they
Mhm.
accepting or do you go in with a completely free mind as far as, religion wise?
Luckily, all these sort of spiritual sites around the world, thankfully, I think all countries realize that, number one, they're sacred. There is some sanctity there, there's purity there. And also they understand that there are people who are from all around the world that would like to see it, so, there may be a Hindu temple or there may be a Buddhist temple. People from everywhere go there. I think it's only mosques that you have to be of that religion to enter. And that also in Turkey, I think you can go to a mosque, even if you're not, a believer. But in Saudi Arabia, you couldn't do that. So it's even in like Islamic countries, even that's divided. Some places are extremely liberal and some places are not.
Okay.
But I mean, I wouldn't consider mosque a spiritual place. I would consider a site as spiritual, so, a mountain or a spot
Oh,
or a
okay.
shrine.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the Buddhist temples are a little different. Hindu sites are a little different because they're not really about religion, right? They're just about energy, and like there's a tree where Buddha meditated and gained enlightenment. Like I think people from all over the world go there, and that's in India actually.
Yeah.
I'd love to go. In fact, my next trip I'm plotting already. I'm going to Rajasthan, which is a very, it's a state in India, and there's a city called Jaipur, which has, I think, the top three best hotels in the world, like these 7-star hotels, like the most incredible luxurious hotels, very, very expensive too. But that city also has old temples. They call it the Pink City because pink sandstone is, they find it there. So all these buildings are made of pink sandstone. So you have these pink buildings,
Mm-hmm.
and pink temples and stuff. So I was just trying to plan out what I'm going to do, where I'm going to go, because it seems like there's so much to see and I have limited time.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of distance to cover. But I'm going to go to Jaipur for sure. And I think I already know of the few spots that I'm going to visit. There's apparently this one ancient temple where if you go there with a pure heart, all your dreams will get fulfilled. It's like one of those miracle temples. So I definitely need
where
to
is
go
this
there
place?
and get all my wishes fulfilled. It's in Jaipur.
Okay, I'm going there.
Yeah, you gotta go there. So I'm sure it'll work out for me in some. I'm sure it'll be blessed to go
Yeah.
there. So I'm definitely gonna make sure I go there.
So I believe that I don't really know why, but I feel as though like an eclipse is something of power. Like it shifts
Yes.
mindset. It shifts almost like the equilibrium. Do you believe in that? Like to be able to witness it?
You're talking about astrology and astronomy. Absolutely. I think that the planets are energy bodies and the sky is an energy body, right? They have frequencies. So the movements affect you. And I mean, the moon affects us. On full moon, you have the high tide. People go, there are more people in mental institutions, more people have accidents. I think during the full moon, people are more emotional. And it's also culmination sometimes of events. So if the moon can clearly, like scientifically, you can prove that the moon affects the Earth and us. The other planets also do, and I mean, they're Jupiter and Saturn and all. They're bigger,
Right.
right? So even just from an astronomical or a scientific perspective, energy affects us. It has frequency, so it must affect our mindset, our psyche, and so on. So I do, and eclipses are very important, whether you believe in astrology or not. It's a change. It's like a major shift. When it happens in a particular sign, in a particular degree. So, for example, they'll say the lunar eclipse this month is happening at 10 degrees of Scorpio. Now, if in your personal chart, like when you were born, if there is something that is 10 degrees Scorpio, it means that this eclipse is directly affecting you. That's when that eclipse does have an effect and things do happen. Now, if you have nothing in 10 degrees Scorpio, then maybe you will just feel some vibration. But the more
Right.
exact it is, it really gets you. And you don't have to believe in astrology. These things work. This is science.
Yeah.
This is nature. It has its own language. It affects all of us. I feel very sorry for these skeptics who are so sort of against all of this. And they get so hostile, right? They think you're like a loony person for believing in whether it's God or energy or any of this stuff. And I'm like, come on, this is even
Right.
science can prove this. So are you saying that you don't believe in science even? Like, come on, right? Just because you don't see it or, maybe you haven't had that divine experience doesn't mean it's not there. I've been very lucky. I have felt the presence of the divine in my life, presence of angels. I have guardian spirit animals taking care of me. I know these things. I don't need to prove them to anyone and I don't need to justify it to anyone. I just know in my heart that it's real.
Right.
And I know that they are here for me. And that's all that matters.
Yeah, I agree. Again, 100%. I think that we are watched over. And I think we do have angels or spirit animals, like you said, that do watch over us and guide us. There's a lot of times when something happens, and I think everybody can relate to this in your life, that you're like, thank you for whoever just helped me in that situation, because you get jammed up or something happens and it's like a miracle that something else happens to counteract that. It's like, this had to have been something. This wasn't coincidence.
Oh, yeah. No.
I don't believe in coincidences.
No, there is no such thing. It's all just universe. It's like divine orchestration, It's like just the universe at play.
Well, it's like when you're, even now, but I remember as a kid, if I knew I was doing something wrong, in the pit of your stomach, you knew it was wrong.
Mm.
Like that feeling's there for a reason. Like
Yes.
that's the
It's
negative.
your gut telling
Yeah.
you, because I think the gut has a lot of nerve endings, right?
Mhm.
And your emotions, your mind is connected to your stomach, and if you're in a bad mood, it affects your digestion.
Mhm.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
right? So when you do something, you're thinking bad thoughts, your tummy is basically saying, no, this is not good. I don't like this.
Mhm.
I don't like the sound of this. Don't do it. And then when you do it anyway, it just kind of tenses up and you get all stuck and stern and stuff. So I think the body is basically communicating with us all the time, and it's trying to tell you you're on the right track, you're doing the right things and all that. I think what we need to do as humans are we need to listen to our bodies more, and also when we get that instinct, when we get that intuition kick in for whatever. I think we need to listen to it more. And I mean, our mind always talks to us, but every once in a while, our inner self, or the inner voice talks to us, and it's a different voice. It's different. It's not the ego, or it's not your mind. It's like the soft voice that tells you, do this, go there. We must follow it, because good things are going to happen if you do, because it's sort of the higher self
Right.
guiding you, and I totally listen to my higher self. And that's why sometimes I do things, it doesn't make sense to me or anyone else. I just know that
Right.
I'm doing the right thing, and it never fails.
Whether it ends up being a good decision or I guess you could say bad decision, but not having the outcome you thought it
Yeah.
would in your mind, it still happened for a reason. Regardless of which path it takes you
Yeah.
down, there was a reason why it took you there. And I think most people
Mhm.
don't find that out until years later. And then if they even have the withal to understand that
Yes.
that was why, they might not even look back on it like that. They may look at it as like, oh, this was good luck, but they don't
Yeah.
think like, well, 3 years ago this happened and this is why this happened.
Yeah, these are all, you have to connect the dots, right? And when you do connect the dots, you'll see, it's like a score, like a music score. It's the story of your life, and you see patterns. And I think the past also reflects sometimes the future. So you have to pay attention to how things have been and the direction that your life is going towards. That's sort of your rhythm. And you need to be in touch with that, because it's almost telling you what's to come in the future. And I think the more intuitive you are kind of, you
Yeah.
just have this awareness of, hey, I think I know where this is going, and I think I can see my destiny and my karma unfold in front of me. My future, I can see it. So you
Exactly.
have to just kind of have that awareness, I think, to understand the patterns, I think, of your life.
Oh, very much so. Preety, where can people find you and follow you and kind of tag along on your journey?
Oh, that's wonderful. So I'm all over social media. I have on Facebook, I've got a sort of a public figure page, which is the best thing. I post a lot of articles and all that there. It's just my name. It's Preity Upala, Preity Upala. I have two pages. I have a personal one too, but it's the public figure one with more members, I guess. That's the correct one.
Okay.
On Instagram, I'm Preity U. So Preity and the letter U. Twitter is Preity Upala as well. And YouTube, I have my own
Oh,
channel.
okay.
And that's great, because I put a lot of interviews there, and a lot of media things. And it is my name, Preity Upala. And I have my own podcast, which is The Eternal Hour. And you can find that on iHeartRadio. And on YouTube, I also have a show called The Preity Experience, but it's on my YouTube show. And if you just Google my name and journalist or articles or something like that, I think you'll find a lot of articles on spirituality, philosophy, culture, kind of even religion, and also geopolitics and international affairs that I've written, because I write for various outlets and all that. So you can find all of those. And just reach out to me, because I love to hear from people, feedback, or if they have questions about anything I've said or written. I always like to kind of engage, and it's always a joy.
Yeah, that's awesome. And we totally get where you're coming from there because we love to interact with our community as well. What we're going to do is put all those links in the show notes. So
Oh, wonderful.
anybody that is listening can just scroll down to the show notes and click over to YouTube, your Instagram. We'll make sure they're all listed in the show notes below. Preity, thank you for joining us for the last hour. It's been
Thank you.
an
Yes, thank
amazing time. You are an extraordinary individual, and we're glad we had the pleasure to have you on for a little bit with us.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be on your wonderful show. And this is my first podcast of the year. So I'm starting the year right.
Yeah.
I get a good vibe for it. This is going to be a great year. I wish both of you the best of luck. And I hope you have a prosperous, impactful, and purposeful life. Have a beautiful rest of the day. And to all the listeners, sending you a lot of love and light as well.